Good evening and welcome to a Resource Center TV special broadcast tonight where we'll be discussing the topic of marriage. So you want to call friends and family and anybody that you can think of because this is a universal topic that either has affected you, will affect you, and hopefully you can get this one right. But our topic tonight, to tell a friend, is marriage. And the subtitle is marriage even worth it? Is it worth it anymore? Is it too much trouble? Should we just date and call it a day? And we've got some great guests on here tonight on Resource Center TV. But let me do some housekeeping rules to inform everybody about the channel and this great production that Benjamin Free has here. Please support this channel, Resource Center TV, which is partnered with Clergy for Cures, a local nonprofit. You can find this channel at Resource Center TV on YouTube. You can also find this channel at Clergy for Cures on Facebook. And you can also find this channel at Clergy for Cures on Twitter. If you want to support this channel, please go to the website at clergyforcures.org. That's clergyforcures.org. And when you're on that website, if you feel so compelled to sow into such a great movement, please hit the donate button and sow if your heart is so moved. Again, this is Resource Center TV. I'm your host tonight, William McKee, and my Twitter handle is right there beside my name if you want to contact me. And we're going to be bringing to you top quality programming in the near future. So bookmark and save our channel and hit that thumbs up button, like and share. Hit that thumbs up button, like and share. Spread the word about what we have going on. I'm going to start it off by introducing my guest tonight. And, you know, it's a blessing just to have a world-class panel before you. So tonight we have, I'm going to introduce our special guest last. To my immediate right, we have a great thinker in his own right that you'll hear a lot from tonight, Mr. Rashad Johnson. And heard a lot about you, Rashad. So you got a lot to live up to tonight. I just want to not put any pressure on you, but I just want to put about 10,000 pounds on your back. So the word is that you're the new oracle in social media right now. So we'll see. Also co-hosting with me tonight and also kind of host guest, if you will. And we do plan some great shows coming up with this world-class scholar, thinker, educator, clergy person. And that's none other than Nkrumah D. Lewis, PhD, who is, like I said, a sociologist, a theologian, and a servant leader of our community. So welcome, Dr. Lewis, tonight. And the woman of the hour, the reason we're all here, the one who will cleanse us and heal the state of marriage tonight, globally, I believe. None other than author, educator, and servant as well, Miss Candi Jeter. Welcome to everybody. And because I'm feeling very kind of aggressive tonight, we're just going to get right to it. We're going to jump in. I'm going to keep it very real. Again, my name is William McKee. I'm your host tonight. And let's get right to it. Again, like I said, we're discussing marriage. We're discussing also communication between men and women. And Miss Jeter writes a lot about that on her Facebook group. And she's authored a couple of books on similar topics and subjects, which she'll share with her books and how you can purchase her books. But tonight, again, we're talking marriage. Should we even endeavor into being married anymore? Is it too expensive? Is it too costly to our peace? Is it too stress consuming? So I'm gonna just jump right in it with an early question to Candi. which is, and I'm the one that authored the questions. You would think I'd have them memorized, but I don't. So I'm gonna just go with the intro. Is marriage worth it, Candy? Is it worth it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think you learn a lot of skills being married that you normally don't get a chance to learn. So if you say is marriage worth it, then you have to say is friendship worth it? Is family worth it? Because it's kind of all inclusive. So you kind of start out on the playground with your friends. So learning how to be, if you're learning friendship on the playground, um, that's going to eventually be the foundation to all other relationships. So I think marriage is definitely the test to see what have you learned or what are you willing to learn, who you really are. Um, Neville Goddard says, everyone is you pushed out. So when I see you, I really see me because I called you into my existence, right? You wouldn't even be here if I hadn't have called you in. I called you in on some level and you responded, whether it was a look in the eye or whether it was just energetically, we were drawn to each other on some level because I called you here. So I called you here because it was something that I was supposed to learn from you. So I think that's what the ultimate goal of marriage is, to teach us the things that we're here to learn. So yes, it's definitely worth it.
Well, I got a statistic here from the CDC, which for those that don't know the acronym, it's the Center for Disease Control. Not that marriage is a communicable disease. I'm not saying that. But the statistic I see is that 39%, let's just round up to 40% of marriages, then this data is as of 2020, 40% of marriages end in divorce. And some of them end in deleterious outcomes to people. People getting shot, stabbed, killed, hurt. I borrowed that from Dion Ferris, I think. So if any other field, Candy, that had a 40% failure rate, we would say that may be a failed institution. But you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about it's this great learning lab. I don't think people are getting into it with that context. So if it's a 40% failure rate, according to the CDC, why can't we succeed at it? What I mean, why
I
are we
think
failing?
because I think we need to redefine success and failure, first of all. If you gotta, if it, just because it ended in divorce doesn't necessarily mean it failed, right? Because everything is connected. So when we finalize something, we're now entering into this linear world, which doesn't really say anything about the spiritual world, right? So you get a divorce and everybody judges it and they put a grade on it. But if you're really learning, then you definitely will ascend as a result of that divorce. You will learn. I hear a lot of people say, if you divorce, you can't tell me nothing about marriage. That's quite the opposite, because I know a lot of married people, and Rashad and I were talking about this. And the reason why Rashad is here is because Rashad is vocal. He's one of the few vocal males that I know that will, make himself vulnerable and put his opinions out there. Like, we may talk all the time, William, but you know how when it's, you like to kind of be in the background, which a lot of men like to be in the background, but they'll talk. So over the years since I've been divorced, I've had the privilege of being able to talk to males because, you know, I'm not trying to necessarily get anything from them. I'm seriously interested in what they have to say. So I'm not going to argue, and I'm not judging or anything like that. So I've had the privilege to be able to hear. And it just seems to me that when I see people who've been married a second time or a third time, they don't seem to have very good friendships with those that they have children with those that they at one time said that they loved. That goes back to the playground. Just because you didn't win the game, do you necessarily stop being friends with the ones that you were playing with on the playground? And that's the win, is if you can lose, if you want to call it that, gracefully, shake hands and say good game and still maintain a friendship. And that's where the kids win. That's where you win. And that's where you build community, because you're still sharing resources if you are close enough. And kids get to actually see that divorce doesn't necessarily mean the end of family. It doesn't mean the end of relationship. So I think if we redefine success and respect the fact that people can divorce amicably or conscious separation, which is called by some, I think that it actually can be a success. Some people do better apart than they do together. So that's all I have to say mainly on that.
Okay, and you gentlemen jump in. If you just tuned in, you're watching a Resource TV Center special, and we're discussing marriage and is it worth it? Let me go to Dr. Lewis and then Rashad. Dr. Lewis, when we say the word marriage, and I want us to talk about too the communication gap between men and women as well. Candi writes a lot about that. But Dr. Lewis, you are a pastor as well as a sociologist. Is marriage a biblical construct? And is that everybody's understanding when we get into it? Or is there a secular thing going on here? What's that about?
I think it's both and. I think from a spiritual standpoint, we recognize it as the first institution that God created. The interesting thing to me, and this is certainly not to be against my own faith, but I've always found it interesting that how Adam and Eve were joined together, but the word marriage is not used. And so I think what happens is as we go along in human history, when words are created, we undergird them, we create a culture around them, such as the taxonomy of race. To liken it to something, to make a parallel, is, biologically we know that race doesn't exist, but once we came up with it, what does it mean socially? And so I think it's a social construct for those that are outside of the faith. But then there is the spiritual understanding of it as an institution, as instituted in scripture. And then we see it practiced, and we even see at the very beginning in the Old Testament, people begin to step outside of what God had ordained at the beginning. We start to see polygamy not long after the first marriage or the first joining of man and woman together. So we see that very early on, man or mankind added to it what they desired for it to be, and to fulfill other certain needs or desires or wants, even to the extent for some of the Jews that it became very practical, in that if a husband died, then his brother was to take on his wife for the simple function of provision. So we have all of this stuff functioning. I think one of the things that I'm taking issue with, and I'll get out of the way, but one of the big things that I'm taking issue with in regards to your question, spirituality versus the secular view of marriage, is where the church has failed the institution of marriage, which is to say, how much of the 40% are we responsible for because we placed an invisible ceiling on people that we said were sinning or shacking, and we forced them into marriage to ratify their sin. So I'll stop there and put a pin there.
Wow, Rashad. Wow, that's powerful. Yeah.
Those are good points. I would say we have to define what marriage is, and everyone has to define what marriage is for themselves. Because oftentimes people get married, in my opinion, just because they feel like they should. They feel like that's the next step in life, and they're not ready for marriage. They don't even understand who they are or what they really want, and they just feel like, well, everybody gets married. It's like sometimes in our society we just go along with things because that's what everybody else does. That's what everybody else said. So, for example, I'm about to put out a book, and one of the chapters is "I want my cake and I'm going to eat it too." And if you look at that, the phrase, he wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. First of all, I think that phrase is stupid. It makes no sense. If it's my cake, why wouldn't I want to eat it? But I believe the original phrase was, when I did some research, is you want your cake and you want to eat others too. But we just adopted, what everybody else says, because everybody else says it. I want my cake and I want to eat it too. So we just go along with it as if it makes sense. And we don't even question the logic. I mean, those of us that at least have a high school diploma can read that statement and understand society and know that it doesn't make sense. So I think we have to redefine marriage, because everyone may not be meant for marriage, and everyone may be looking for something different in marriage. In Hollywood, marriage is usually just a business arrangement. Some people look at marriage as a quest for love and building family and building legacy. Other people get married just because their parents tell them they should, or some people get married just because they've had a boyfriend or girlfriend for a certain amount of time and they feel like, okay, that's the next step. So I think a lot of the failed marriages comes from not even knowing who you are or what you really want in marriage and just doing it because everybody else is doing it.
Wow, powerful, powerful. Want to give it that was powerful, Rashad. And if you're just tuning in again, you're watching Resource Center TV. We're doing a special on marriage and communication with men and women tonight. We got to sit down with Candi Jeter, and we also have two other awesome guests, and we're going to keep this discussion going. And so, Candi, building off what was just said, I have some more statistics from the CDC. And I had to go to the Center of Disease Control because people are talking about marriage like it is a communicable disease on par with COVID. That's wrong. I know it. But another statistic said that, so let's look at the most common reasons for divorce. And we're going to pivot to communication and lack thereof with men and women. According to the CDC, the most commonly reported major contributors to divorce were lack of commitment, infidelity, and conflict, arguing. Okay. It also says that what they called a final straw reason was infidelity, domestic violence, and substance abuse. And I'm going to add in something else that they said a little further down, which was mental health, undiagnosed cases of mental health issues. So, Candi, those are the contributing factors, the experts say. Some would say the origin of all of that is communication. Why can't men and women communicate? Let me stop you. I don't want to hear what you got to say. I'm tired of hearing your voice. I was just simulating an argument. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what I always say is that, and this may be too more. This may be an answer that is just a little bit too harsh, but what I always say is that men like, I can't say what I want to say, but they like the sex, but they don't really like the woman, and women like the attention and the sex. We love the physical, but we don't like the essence of the genders. We want each gender to be something that they're not, right? We don't appreciate the complementary energies that we have. Why does he do this? And why does he do that? And why does she do that? And why does she? And I think it's sad because we all have the masculine, feminine inside of us, just like we all have the mother, father inside of us, right? So when we get together, we are activating something in us that either turns us on and draws us in, or it repels us. And whatever that is, that's something inside of us that we have not necessarily rectified. So when I had some notes earlier that I was just jotting down, not even connected to this. I was just jotting them down. And it was 5 things. And I did not intend for them to be C's, but it was cause, and it was communication, and let me see if I have it, and consistency, and connection, and commitment. Those are like the 5 things, because that cause is going to be the motivation, right? And that communication is going to be that foundation, and that consistency is going to be that spark, and the connection. I mean, the consistency is going to be that rhythm, and the connection is going to be that spark, and that commitment is going to be the bond. And how many times have we met people that we've had a few of those things with, but not necessarily all of those things, and we may have the cause, we may have the communication, but we don't have the commitment. Or we may have the commitment, and then we may not have, the spark, So I think that we have to just kind of look at the things that we say. Hold on one second. Get with Rashad or Dr. Lewis in just a second. Hold on.
Dr. Lewis, communication and
yes, sir. I want to borrow from something that Rashad said at the outset, which is, I think we need to define communication. I mean, I remember growing up, my dad would always say that men were rational and women were emotional, which is very stereotypical. But I look at the manners in which we function. It's almost like the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, that we communicate differently. One of the things that I've tried to stress in my relationships is, at the very outset, I would say to a mate, listen, let's define communication as not whether or not we agree, but the fact that we've gotten everything that we wanted to say out on the table respectfully. So to me, I think a lot of people think that communication has to be consensus. And we don't really allow the space for, she used the interesting word, rhythm. Our rhythm could be that we do go tit for tat and then we agree to disagree, but we do so in love. And I want to end with one of the things that has really been resonating in my spirit about our community is something that Dr. King said, which is that we still have not yet learned to disagree without being violently disagreeable.
Wow. When you were talking before we go to Rashad, I was thinking I have an uncle that used to say, I'll admit when I'm wrong, I'm just never wrong. Rashad, Rashad.
I think you're right. Communication is huge. And I think with communication, a lot of times we have to look at what our goal is, just like Dr. Lewis was saying, in communication. Like, what is the goal? What are you really trying to get out? If the goal is, I think the reason why arguments are never really profitable, because usually, well, I would say all the ones that I'm in, the goal of the argument is for me to let you know how wrong you are and how right I am. And unfortunately, I have somebody on the other end that thinks the exact same way. And so there's no win in that situation. I think communication, you have to be open to understanding that, okay, I may not have all the answers. I may not be totally right. I think it's you have to be secure enough in yourself to be able to be wrong and not take it as a slight against you. You have to be man enough or woman enough to understand that I'm not going to always be right. And I have to be open to other people's opinions and other people's mindsets. I think it's there's danger in a relationship when you have one and especially two partners that believe that they are right all of the time, and their total motivation for communication is just to communicate, to let you know how right they are and show you how wrong you are. I think that's a big issue in a lot of communication that goes wrong.
Wow.
Let me
So-
dovetail. Let me say what I see with older couples. I see some older couples that have been married 40, 50 years, and they have adopted this mantra that I'm sure you've heard is happy wife, happy life, which as we talk about communication, means that I will acquiesce before I get into an argument. And it goes back to what Rashad is saying. It's you go into the conversation with the idea that there has to be a right and a wrong, without seeing that somewhere along the line we just need to hear each other, and perhaps then we can reach a compromise. So
Well, that's a good point. Now, this flag behind me is the United Nations peacekeeping flag, and they send the peacekeepers in when there's chronic war in certain countries. So that kind of represent. I kind of for the night. Some of the couples I know, it's a state of war, and although we make light of this, people are really coming away from a lot of these relationships, even past the 40%. I mean, that's divorce, but look at how many people stay together and are traumatized by these situations in unholy matrimony. I digress. We got about less than a minute. Well, we're coming up towards the end. Give me a parting thought and let the people know if you're working on any projects, where they can find that and how they can reach you. I'll start in the reverse order with Rashad.
Well, I have I have a book out. I have another book that I'm about to launch. You can reach me on my website at rashadjohnson.com, and that's RASHAAD Johnson.com, and it has the link to all my social media handles on that. So it's the best way to reach me.
Okay, great. And I can't wait for that book that you're working on to be done. I enjoyed your comments tonight. Dr. Lewis.
yes, sir. Looking forward to working with these two again. My handle is at 2Doc Shakur, the number 2, capital DOC Shakur, a play on Tupac Shakur. One of the projects that I'm working on that I'd be interested in talking with the guest about is, it's a book called Sleeping with the Assignment. It talks about the very thing we're talking about, religiosity and the church and marriage and relationships. So that's my big project coming up.
Got you. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Awesome. And author, educator, Miss Candi Jeter, let folks know where they can reach you and what you're working on.
Just simply go to thelettinggobook.com, join my mailing list, and I'll send you some stuff. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you all again soon.
Okay, thank you, Candi. And I think it's an overwhelming consensus, to use Doc's word, that we should do this again. I think it's very meaningful, and that means it's always worth it. Just some closing comments. I'd like to thank the guests tonight who did an outstanding job. Hit them up and see what else they're doing. In addition to that, stay tuned for more great guests on Resource Center TV. And you can see Resource Center TV. You can see us on YouTube at Resource Center TV, on Facebook at Clergy for Cures, a great nonprofit collaboration there, and on Twitter at Clergy for Cures. Also, you can also go to the website, which is clergyforcures.org, and please www.clergyforcures.org, and please click that donate button and support this channel and support this movement. On behalf of Benjamin Free and all the people at Clergy for Cures and Resource Center TV, I'm your host, William McKee. Thank you for your time. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a great evening, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.